the thick ones, like this style, or big, also good. Masaches Yuma. Oh, it's there. Wow, okay. It's right there, the red one. I didn't realize. Okay, let's continue. Let's fill the void. Yeah.
Your tissue. Rabbi, your tissue.
Thank
your
you.
tissue. Yes. No, I'll take it. I'll take your tissue.
Actually, it had a tremendous relation. So it sits, it's engraving Kodesh LaHashem, right? So what it means, that sits is representing the thoughts, the outmost, right? And it's a golden thoughts, fantastic thoughts. So, but the Rebbe Shalom created us in such a way that there is always emptiness. Which one? The Kodesh LaHashem. You have to feel that Kodesh LaHashem, that emptiness. You need to feel with the Kedusha for Hashem, because that's the fulfillment. Beautiful. That's the emptiness that we have. Beautiful. And we will never satisfy it unless it's filled with Kedusha. You always Kedusha. You always want to feel more and more. It's always empty. Wow. It's never enough.
Yeah. So it's good. Okay, the few mit Beis.
That makes it so good. Rav Mashula, he mentioned it. He said,
I don't know. Could be. I don't know. It's Shaykh. I don't know. I don't know all the minhagim.
Where's the Oramakif in feeding? Where is the Oramakif?
Okay, we'll see. We're not done yet. Yeah. This mimer is multi-layered, multi-dimensional. It goes from arrogance to agriculture. It's very unique. Okay, Daf Yud Amud Beis, the Mishnah. This is the third Mishnah in Psachim. The first Mishnah we learned the Chiyuv of Bdikas Chametz, the night of 14. The second Mishnah we continue to say that we're not afraid and we don't assume that a weasel or a rat or a similar rodent dragged Chametz from one part of the house to another part of the house, from a part of the house that had Chametz to a part of the house that was already clean, or from one house to another house. We do not consider that to be a legal, valid, authentic concern that we have to tackle. We just don't do that. That's ein choshishin. And now, the Gemara continues to discuss the time limits for Bdikas Chametz. Rabbi Yehuda says, Boitkin, you check Chametz, or Yudalad, the night of Yudalad, the night of the 14th of Nisan, Ubi Yudalad Shachris, and then you check on Yudalad in the morning, Erev Pesach in the morning, and then Ubishas Abir, and then you check Bishas Abir, which means during the time of the disposal of Chametz, which is of course the 6th hour, because Min HaTorah we know that the mitzvah of tashbisu, disposing the chametz, begins in the beginning of the 7th hour, right? Which would be approximately in a day that starts at 6, it would be 12 o'clock p.m. But the Chachamim pushed it back 1 hour, said you have to burn the chametz in the beginning of the 6th hour, Sorfim B'tchilos Sheish, which would be 11 o'clock a.m. So that's called Shas Abir, the time of the disposal of the chametz. So Rabbi Yehuda says you do them b'dikas chametz. Now it seems like from the Mishnah here, Rabbi Yehuda is saying you do b'dikas chametz 3 times. 3 times, which is fascinating. You do b'dikas chametz at night, you do b'dikas chametz in the morning, and you do b'dikas chametz in right before the afternoon, b'shas habir. You do again b'dikas chametz in your house, which would mean, according to the simple interpretation, that Rabbi Yehuda really feels that you can't rely on one b'dika, because people are human and they make mistakes and they miss. They might miss chametz, so therefore, the Chachamim obligate you to do it 3 times, again and again and again, and hopefully, what you didn't find the first time, you'll find the second. What you didn't find the second, you'll find the third. And there are 3 periods: the night, the morning, and late morning, 11 o'clock a.m. b'shas habir. That's what Rabbi Yehuda tainas. Fascinating.
You keep checking. You have to check again.
Okay.
No?
Fascinating. Reb Nuchem, can you give me that safe for the Shulchan Aruch right there? That Atazah, yeah. Chachamim Maimrim, the Chachamim say, no, this is not the way to understand it. Loi Bodak or Yudalit, Yivdik be Yudalit. If you weren't Bodak on the night of Yudalit Nisan, then you could be Mashlim and should be Bodak on the day of the 14th. When? B'pashtos, in the morning, right? Loi Bodak be Yudalit. If you weren't Bodak be Yudalit on the 14th, Yivdik b'toich hamoyed. You should be Bodak b'toich hamoyed. What does b'toich hamoyed mean? We might have thought b'toich hamoyed means the middle of Yom Tov. So Rashi says b'toich hamoyed b'shah shishis. Shehu moyed habir. What they mean b'toich hamoyed means in the 6th hour, which is the designated time for disposing chametz. Why would Rashi learn like this b'toich hamoyed? I think it makes sense. I think it makes sense that Rabbeinu David, one of the Rishonim, teaches this in Rashi, and it makes a lot of sense, that the Chachamim are paralleling Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda said you have to be Baidik 3 times, at night, in the morning, and late morning, b'shas habiyur. So the Chachamim said, no, you got it wrong. If you didn't do it at night, do it Yudalit. If you didn't do it Yudalit, do it b'toich hamayit. So Rashi is learning that they're paralleling Rabbi Yehuda. If you didn't do it at night, do it Yudalit in the morning. And if you didn't do it Yudalit in the morning, then do it Yudalit b'toich hamayit, which means in the designated time of disposal, which is the 6th hour, that's when you do it. Don't do b'dikas chametz 3 times. It's 3 alternatives. If you didn't do it the first, you have a second chance. You don't have a second chance, you have a third chance. That's how the Chachamim teach it according to Rashi. B'toich hamayid means b'shah shishis. Loi badak b'toich hamayid. What if you didn't check chametz b'toich hamayid in middle of the mayid, which according to Rashi means when in the 6th hour? Then yivdoich la'achar hamayid. You should be boidek after the designated time of disposing chametz. What does this mean, Zak Rashi? La'achar hamayid mishei shoyas ulamayla acha techshach. From 6 hours and up until it gets dark, meaning until nightfall. So the Chachamim say, we're going to add a 4th period for b'dikas chametz. If you didn't do all of the above, so now, Mishei Shayas Alamayla, after the time when disposal ends. When does disposal end? Rashi says, at the end of 6 hours, the 7th hour begins. Now you should still check chametz until nightfall, the night of the Seder, until Pesach, ad shetechshach. That's when you do it. This is... Right. Okay, one moment. So this is how Rashi learns the 2 shittas. Rabbi Yehuda says 3 times b'dika. The Chachamim say no. 1 time b'dika. If you didn't do it once, you do second. If you didn't do second, you do third. If you didn't do third, you could do it throughout the day. The Mishnah finishes. Umasha meshayer. Whatever you leave over from the chametz after the b'dika, yanichenu b'tzina. The halach is you have to put it away in a private place, meaning in a secure place. Kadei shalei tzarich b'dika acharav. So you shouldn't need to do another b'dika for this chametz that you put away. What does this mean? It doesn't mean, first the Gemara earlier mentioned this. Initially we thought that you always have to do b'dika. Why? Because maybe if you have to be concerned that a rat took your chametz and spread it across the house. But as the Gemara explained, that's not what the Mishnah means. The Mishnah means you're going to have to do b'dika in case you see that a weasel comes and takes the chametz away in front of you. If you don't hide your chametz, you just leave it somewhere in the corner, and you see a weasel come and drag it away, you're going to have to do another b'dika. Or even if you put down 10 pieces and you find 9 pieces, you're going to have to do another b'dika. So that's why, and it may be very difficult, you may not know this halacha, you may forget. So therefore, the Mishnah is telling you a halacha, not just as the poskim say, not just an eitzah, but a halacha, that you have to put it away in a secure place, so it shouldn't come to that a weasel shouldn't be able to have access to it. For example, you put a keli over it, you hang it up in the ear, you put it in a private drawer, you lock it up. And of course, this is not only about rats and rodents, it's also lahavdil about children and babies and infants. You have to put away the chametz in case you're going to see somebody drag it away, or you're going to find crumbs, you're going to find a mishmash, you're going to find a problem, and then you're going to have to be boidik. And you may forget to be boidik, or you may not know this halacha. So therefore, yanichenu b'tzina. Here there's a very important taisvis, v'im loy badak b'toich hamayit. If you weren't boidik b'toich hamayit, yivdik acher hamayit. Pirish b'kuntris, pirish hakundas b'shah shishis. Mayid is the 6th hour, and the Chachamim say you could do it after the 6th hour till it's night. V'kasha, the Rabbi Yehuda kari le'shah sabir, v'lama shina l'shaynai. If Rashi is correct, why would the Chachamim change the language? Rabbi Yehuda called it shas habir, the time of disposal. So the Chachamim should have said loy badak b'yudalid yivdak b'shas habir. Why do they call it b'toich hamayid? Why did the language change to b'toich hamayid? In middle of the holiday. So Rashi says it doesn't mean the middle of the holiday, it means in the middle of the designated, Mayad means designated. The designated time for Bir Chametz. Why did they change the language if they mean the same time? Fascinating question. Ella b'toich hamayid hainu mitchilas sheva at soif haPesach. B'toich hamayid literally means in middle of the Yom Tov Pesach. The Chachamim are saying if you didn't do b'dika at the beginning of the 6th hour, you can do it from the beginning of the 7th hour until throughout the entire Moed until the end of Pesach. So if I didn't do B'dikas Chametz, right? Let's say I get stuck somewhere on the road, whatever, and I come back, it's Chol HaMoed, I have to do B'dikas Chametz. One second, very good. Excellent question. Ula Achar HaMoed. What about after Moed? Loit Rashi, Achar HaMoed means what? From the 7th hour till nightfall. But according to this, Achar HaMoed, he says, Yivdik, you have to check. Why? So that prohibited chametz shouldn't get mixed in with permissible chametz, and you should eat it. Since we have a halacha, that chametz over alav pesach asur, if I have chametz in my house, that I left in my house, for whatever reason, I'm not talking chametz that I sold to a Gentile. That wasn't mine. But chametz that belonged to me, that I left in my domain. A Jew owns a grocery store. It happens. And he doesn't get rid of the chametz, right? If he sells the store, fine. But if he doesn't sell the store, that chametz is forbidden after Pesach. So the halacha would be, according to Chachamim, you have to do b'dikas chametz in your house after Pesach. Why? So that you shouldn't come across that chametz and you may come to eat it. You'll buy new bread from the bakery after Pesach, you're allowed to eat. But you have old bread, frozen pizza, that stayed Pesach in your house and you're not allowed to eat it, and you may come to eat it because it's going to get confused with the frozen pizza that you're allowed to eat. So maybe you have to do a new b'dikas chametz after Yom Tov.
Is there a problem during Pesach to do a b'dika because if you find something and it's borer?
Very good question. You want to know what Rabbi Yehuda says? Don't do this. Rabbi Yehuda says the last time for b'dika is the 6th hour. We'll soon see the machloikas.
It seems like they require you to do it.
They require you to do another b'dika in the middle of Pesach. That's how Tosfos learns.
Question number 2 on the Chumash Shavuot Pesach, is that la'olam?
Yeah. Chametz Shavuot Pesach, you're never allowed to eat. Yeah. That's why you got to get rid of it. That's what Tosfos is saying. V'Rashi le'rotza lefarishke. And Tosfos says Rashi didn't want to say this. You know why? Because back to that original machloikas, it's like the axis upon which much of the first Perek revolves. In the first Mishnah, when it said Boitkin as chametz, Rashi said Kadesh le'lavro b'yirah b'yimotzi. Why do we do b'dikas chametz? Not to transgress the prohibition of having chametz in your house on Pesach. Tosfos said, why do we do b'dikas chametz? Shema yavoy la'achla, you may come to eat it. Rashi says he do b'dikas chametz not to be over by Yerah Bal Yimotze. So Tosfos says Rashi didn't want to say what I'm saying in the Mishnah. Why? Because if the purpose of b'dikas chametz is not to be over by Yerah Bal Yimotze, does it make sense to be b'dikas chametz after Pesach? After Pesach, there's no issur by Yerah Bal Yimotze. If you say b'dikas chametz is that you shouldn't come to eat it, even after Pesach, you're not allowed to eat chametz sha'avar alav Pesach. Chametz that was in your house on Pesach that you didn't get rid of, you're not allowed to eat. So maybe you can do b'dikas chametz after Pesach. But Rashi doesn't want to accept this interpretation because he holds that b'dikas chametz is for Bayirah Bayimotze. That can apply Erev Pesach. It can apply Erev Pesach in the afternoon, but it can't apply after Pesach. And that's why Rashi says B'toich HaMoed means in the 6th hour. Achar HaMoed means at the end of the 6 hours all the way till nightfall, which is after, post the designated time for disposing the chametz. I should just mention that I think the Chidush Aran says, why does how does Rashi explain the fact that the Chachamim change from B'Shas Habir to B'Toich HaMoyed? The answer is because according to Rabbi Yehuda, that's the only Shas Habir, because you're not allowed to do B'dikas Chametz afterwards. But according to the Chachamim, since you're allowed to do B'dikas Chametz till nightfall, so therefore Shas Habir is not only the 6th hour, Shas Habir continues throughout the day. If you didn't do B'dikas Chametz, of course Shas Habir is the 6th hour. But if you didn't do, they say you should do B'dikas Chametz and get rid of it. So therefore, their Shas Habir somehow extends. That's why they changed from the terminology Shas Habir to Toich HaMoyed. That's how the Ran explains why Rashi believes they changed the lashon, which was Tosfos' big question, which proved to him that B'toich HaMoyed doesn't mean the 6th hour; it means the middle of Pesach, which is why the Chachamim changed from B'Shas Habir to B'toich HaMoyed.
Why is this a lashon of Baval and not Shalom?
Why is a lashon what?
Why is it a lashon Baval instead of Shalom? Is it, if I'm going to say it should not be found, it should not be seen, I would say Shalom even. Is this,
Oh.
why difference in lashon?
Oh. Why they use the word Bal Yera instead of Lo Yera?
This is a Baal.
You're saying since the Chumash says Lo Yera Lecha Chametz, Lo Yera Lecha Asar B'chal Gvulecha,
This is a better question.
Shivas Yam Asar Le Matzeh B'Teichem. So why do they use the word Bal Yera? Bal Yera, Bal Yematzeh. They should use the word Lo Yera. You're saying.
Shalom. That it shouldn't be. It just occurred to me that
I don't know. It's an interesting area. I have to look it up. I don't know.
You're right, but because you probably know.
No, you're just saying why they changed the word to Baal. You say over below Yera.
it has to be a Baal of it. Is that the same word?
No. Baal means not, but you're saying why? It's a good. I don't know. I have to look it up. Yeah. Zog the Gemara, my time with Rabbi Yehuda. What's the reason for Rabbi Yehuda? What's the reason for Rabbi Yehuda to say that you need to do 3 b'dikas? Reb Chizda and Reb Huna Damri Travayu. Reb Chizda and Rabbi, the son of Reb Huna, both say the same idea. A fascinating answer. Keneged shalosh hashbasas shebetayra. Rabbi Yehuda believes that this parallels the 3 languages of disposing chametz that the Torah introduces throughout the Chumash. Language number 1. The pasuk says in the end of Parshas Boy, Lo yeira lecha chametz v'lo yeira lecha sa'or. Chametz and yeast should not be seen to you. They shouldn't be seen to you. Next, also in Parshas Boy earlier, Shivas yamim sa'or lo yimotzei bevatechem. For 7 days, yeast or sourdough should not be found in your home. And again in Parshas Bo even earlier, Ach b'yom harishon tashbisu sa'or mebatechem. On the first day, which we explained to mean Erev Pesach, we learned on Daf Hey, Daf Dalet and Daf Hey, b'yom harishon means Erev Pesach, you should tashbisu. You should eliminate the chametz, the sourdough from your home. There are 3 languages that the Torah employs regarding eliminating the chametz. As Rashi says, shalosh hashbasas, shalosh l'shoynes shel hashbasa. Re'iyah, mitziyah, v'ashbasa. You shouldn't see chametz. Chametz shouldn't be found, shouldn't be present. And you should eliminate, you should destroy, you should get rid of. Tashbisu, you should exterminate the chametz from your home. Comes Rabbi Yehuda and says, the fact that the Torah employs 3 languages is to teach us something. To indicate that there are 3 times for b'dikas chametz. There's the night, and there's the morning, and there's the afternoon. So the Chassam Sofer says beautifully that it's not stam 3, and then we make 3 times. It's actually connected with the 3 terms. Why? Because yimotzei applies to nighttime. Because we learned before, you remember, that boitkinas hachametz la'or haneir, why do you use a candle? So we said because we learn mitzia from mitzia from chippus, chippus from neir, dav zayin amid beis, achapus is Yerushalayim, but neir is, or neir Hashem nishmas adam koifish l'chadrei vaten, and a neir is balayla. So mitzia you find through a candle, and that's only by night, because by day, shraga b'tira mayahani, a candle is useless by day. As the Gemara says, a candle during the daytime doesn't help you because you don't see it. So lo yimatzei, to make sure that it's not found, you use a candle, which is night. Lo yeirah, don't see chametz. When do you see? We have by tzitzis. It says uriisem oisai. So the Gemara says pratlik sus laila. From here we learn that what you wear at night doesn't need tzitzis because it's not a zman of seeing. When you could see, today we see at night because we have Edison or Con Edison. But according to the natural nature of the world before the technology of having, besides if you use candles, but generally you don't see at night. So lo yirah applies to the day. Then you have tashbisu. When by the day, the morning, when the sun comes up and you could start seeing things like the chiyuv of tzitzis, that's the time of ri'iyah. So we say lo yirah, you shouldn't see. So get rid of it, because if you don't get rid of it, you're going to see it because it's daytime. At night, you're not going to see it anyway, even if you don't get rid of it. You're going to find it, but you're not going to see it. Finding you could do at night also, because you could look for it with a candle. But seeing, naturally seeing without looking, you're not going to do during the day, because during the day you don't need to find it, you're just going to see it. So mele, in order not to see it, you have to do b'dikas chametz. And then there's tashbisu. Tashbisu is, it says ach b'yom harishon. Ach b'yom harishon means by chatzos, the beginning of the 7th hour, the beginning of the 6th hour. So from here, Rabbi Yehuda learns that you have to do b'dikas chametz 3 times. One is Keneged Lo Yimatzeh, which is at night. One is Keneged Lo Yirah, which is the morning. And one is the time of Ach B'yem Rishon Tashbisu, which is B'shas Sabir, the beginning of the 6th hour. Minat the beginning of the 7th hour, Midrabanan, the beginning of the 6th hour. That's what Rabbi Chizda and Rabbi Bar Rabun explained, why Rabbi Yehuda says you have to do B'dikas Chametz 3 times.
So why did the Rabbi Chizda didn't put Sukkim in the right order? So first,
the psukim, it's interesting. He goes backwards. He starts with the later, then he goes with the earlier, then he goes with the earliest. It's interesting. He goes backwards. He goes in the order. He goes in order, but not forward, but backward. He does it in the order. But the order is backwards. Because Lo Yirah Lecha Chametz, the Shema is parshas by Perik Yud Gimel Pasuk Zayin, right? Shivas Yom Sa'or is Perik Yud Beis Pasuk Yud Tes, and Ach B'yom Rishon is Perik Yud Beis Pasuk Tesvav. So it's actually going backwards. You want to know why he doesn't go forward?
No, in the Torah level he goes backwards, so it makes no sense, number one. And the second thing is, you should have first started with Yimotza, then Lo Yirah, and then Tashbis.
Right.
It's not chronological, it's not according to Torah, it's his own.
You want to know why he does the psukim in this order? It's a good harder. It's a good harder. Meisiv Rabbi Yosef asked a question. The Brisa says, Rabbi Yehuda says, Kol shaloi badak b'shloisha prakim alalu shuvei neboidik. If somebody didn't check chametz during these 3 periods, which 3 periods? The night and the morning, and 11 a.m., the beginning of the 6th hour, you're not boidik again. Shuvei neboidik. In other words, he says, this is the end time. This is deadline. Alma, what do we see from here? It sounds that the only argument between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim is only if you could do it after that time. It's not a machloikas how many times you do b'dikas chametz, because then the Brisa should have mentioned 2 arguments. Argument number 1 is you got to do it 3 times versus 1. Argument number 2, if you didn't do it during these 3 times, you can't do it anymor. So it sounds like the Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim are only arguing about one issue, and that is the deadline of when you can't do b'dikas chametz anymore. Mar Zutra Masni Hachi. Mar Zutra explained and taught the question of Rabbi Yosef in a different fashion, much stronger, much more emphatic. Masiv Rabbi Yosef, Mar Zutra quoted Rabbi Yosef as the following. Rabbi Yosef asked, the Brisa says, Rabbi Yehuda says, Kol shalei badak be'echad mishloisha prakim alalu shuvene boidik. If somebody was not boidik in one of these 3 periods, he's not boidik anymore. Alma, we see clearly b'shuv eine boidik hudi pligi. The only argument is if you could be boidik after the designated time of the beginning of the 6th hour. In the first Brisa, Rabbi Yehuda says, if you weren't boidik in these 3 periods, you're not boidik again. You could taich in one of these 3 periods or in all of them. So it could still go 2 ways. But in Mazutra's Brisa that he had in his tradition, it says clearly Rabbi Yehuda says you only have to do it 1 of the 3 times. So this whole premise that Rabbi Yehuda says you have to do b'dikas chametz 3 times, and Rabbi Chizda and Rabbi the son of Rabbi Huna brought psukim for it, is untenable according to this brisa, which says that Rabbi Yehuda only argues about the deadline for b'dikas chametz, not about how many times you have to do b'dikas chametz. So the Gemara therefore concludes that we understood the Mishnah erroneously. Ella Rabbi Yehuda nami imlay bada ka'amar. Rabbi Yehuda also does not necessitate 3 times b'dikas chametz. Rabbi Yehuda means just like the Chachamim, if you were in Boydek at night, you do it in the morning. If you didn't do it in the morning, you do it during the time of the disposal. The argument is one argument, not how many times. The argument is this. Mar Savar Rabbi Yehuda holds Mikami Yisura in Basar Yisura loy. The only time you're allowed to do b'dikas chametz is before the time when chametz becomes prohibited to eat, which is Erev Pesach, by Chatzos ben HaTorah, and the Chachamim said that the Isur of chametz should start an hour earlier, meaning that already the beginning of the 6th hour, you can't benefit from it, and you have to get rid of it. Basar Yisura, but after the time of the Isur, loy, you're not allowed to do b'dikas chametz anymore, even though you never did. Why would Rabbi Yehuda hold this? I'll tell you why. Gzeira dilma asila meichel minei. We're afraid if you're doing b'dikas chametz erev Pesach in the afternoon, you may find chametz, and unwittingly, inadvertently, you're going to eat it. Rabbanan savri the Rabbanan say loy gazrin, and we don't make this gzeira, and therefore you could be by the chametz even after the zman of the isur of chametz begins. So as Rashi told us, the Chachamim say you could be boydek a whole day till nightfall. But here there was the machlokas of Rashi and Tosfos. Rashi holds once Pesach comes, you wouldn't be allowed to be boydek chametz. And we would already be able to understand a nice word here. Because once Pesach comes, the issur of eating chametz is kares. The issur of eating chametz is death penalty by heaven. It's a much more serious issur. Where during Erev Pesach in the afternoon, there's no Isur Kares for eating chametz. So therefore Rashi would hold that even the Chachamim hold that you're allowed to be boydek chametz the whole Erev Pesach till nightfall. Rabbi Yehuda says no, because he's afraid you're going to eat it. The Chachamim say you could be boydek, but nonetheless they're afraid on Pesach to be boydek. However, Tosfos holds clearly that even in the middle of Pesach, the Chachamim say you could do b'dikas chametz, and you have to do b'dikas chametz. Why? We're not afraid that when you find chametz, you're going to eat it. The Gemara will explain soon more the svara of the Chachamim, why they're not geyser. But this is the machlaikas, which means everybody holds your boydek chametz only once. The 3 periods we spoke about is only if you didn't do the first, you do the second, didn't do the second, you do the third. The only machlaikas is what happens after that. If you didn't do 1, 2, 3, Rabbi Yehuda says, fa'falin, there's nothing to do anymore, no more b'dikas chametz. And the Chachamim say that you should continue to do b'dikas chametz. In other words, even though there was bittul, and if there was bittul, you're not going to be over by Yirah Bal Yimatzeh, that's the vart. Nonetheless, you continue to do b'dikas chametz in the afternoon, you continue to do b'dikas chametz a whole day Erev Pesach, even though you're not allowed to eat chametz, and we don't mind that you're going to have contact with chametz because you're doing it to get rid of it, not to eat it. Where Rabbi Yehuda said, no, your end time is over, you have reached the deadline for b'dikas chametz after the 6th hour. Once 12 o'clock hits, once the clock hits 12 o'clock p.m., no more b'dikas chametz for you.
What's going on here? It's like one people hold that Yehuda say that there is a gezeira, and another ones that want to hold there is no gezeira. Is there a gezeira or not? Is gezeira for everybody? No, it's not that we choose to gezeiras. If there is a gezeira, everybody has to hold with it. If not, even the chachamim.
Excellent question. You want to know, well, wait a minute, Yehuda says there's no gzeira, Chachamim say there is a gzeira. Good question. These were all members of the Sanhedrin. They were members of the Jewish court. How did the Jewish court decide these things? They used to vote. So there was a vote. This is the vote. Rabbi Yehuda said, there's a reason. You're right. And he was a minority. And therefore the halacha is like the Chachamim. You're right. Rabbi Yehuda is a minority. Most of the sages disagreed with him. They said, we're not worried about this. And therefore there's a chiyuv b'dikas chametz even afterwards. It's exactly what you're seeing. What you're seeing now is a video of the debate of the Sanhedrin. And these debates is what created the halachas of Torah Shabbal Peh. This happens to be what we call the genre of gzeiris, meaning those things that the Chachamim did in order to create fences to make sure that there is a buffer zone that people don't violate Torah. For example, b'dikas chametz, that we shouldn't come to eat chametz, or b'dikas chametz, we shouldn't be over on bayirah, however you touch it. And the question is, can we do b'dikas chametz erev Pesach in the afternoon? Can we do b'dikas chametz in the middle of Pesach? The Chacham said absolutely yes. We have an obligation to do b'dikas chametz. It's not nullified just because you're not allowed to eat chametz. And Rabbi Yehuda argued. Rabbi Yehuda said, no more. I'm afraid you're going to do b'dikas chametz, which is a rabbinic mitzvah, beautiful. And what are you going to make the person end up doing? Eating chametz, which is a biblical prohibition. So do me a favor. The whole point of rabbinic mitzvahs is to protect you, to create a fence that a person shouldn't violate Torah. Right? It's like around a nuclear plant. You make sure that there's a lot of security, that nobody gets close. Right? You have a dangerous source of electricity in a house or outside of a house, you put a fence so kids shouldn't touch it, right? You have a dangerous cliff, you put a fence. That's the whole point of the Gzeirus D'Rabbanan, to make a fence. And what are you doing as a result of your mitzvah to do b'dikas chametz? What's going to happen? The person is going to find chametz in the afternoon. He's starving. There's no food in the house. There's no food in Jewish homes erev Pesach in the afternoon. He's starving. He finds a piece of marble cake. He's going to eat it. He's going to be over on the issue of eating chametz erev Pesach. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says, please, Tumanish Toivis, let's not do b'dikas chametz, because what you're doing is you're going to be machshel a Jew in a isim and a Torah. We're not sure, but maybe b'dikas chametz at night is the best time to do it, or in the morning, or in the beginning of the 6th hour, which is the Shas Habir. So very good. This is exactly the vote of the Sanhedrin.
So what's the Isser eating that marble cake? Pesach. It's not Koras.
It's not kares, but it's prohibited, as we're going to see later.
So what does he get?
There's going to be the next sugya in Gemara.
He gets Malchus Mardis? What does he get?
No, it's prohibited min Torah, but it's not a penalty of kares.
I'm saying that the Chachamim were goyzer.
No, it's not a gzeir of chachamim. It's an issur min Torah to eat chametz erev Pesach in the afternoon.
Yeah, but I'm saying that we're
So the Rabbi Yehuda says, therefore, there's no chiyuv b'dikas chametz then.
the Chachamim were goyzer and Rabbi Yehuda were goyzer as part of
Yeah.
the same.
Yes.
One says that you
Yes.
should go ahead and
Rabbi Yehuda said you're not allowed to do b'dikas chametz erev Pesach in the afternoon.
He said we're not afraid to
Exactly.
eat it.
We're the ones who made this takana, and this takana is cancelled in this situation. It has a time limit. Where the Chacham say, no, it doesn't have a time limit. It continues till nightfall, and according to Tosfos, it continues throughout Pesach and continues after Pesach.
Yet the biblical prohibition is in either case.
Right.
So they pushed off a biblical
Right.
prohibition because they weren't worried about it. I don't understand why they weren't worried about it. How could they paskin that they're not worried about it?
So that the Gemara is going to explore what he was holding and what he was holding. The Gemara is going to get into it.
So basically, it's the bedikas, you don't do bedikas because you might come to eat it.
Right.
So usually bedikas, the whole reason you do bedikas, you should.
Right, but we're afraid it's Erev Pesach in the afternoon, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You didn't do b'dikas chametz, right?
You might come to
So you go check for chametz, and you're going to find. You may find. And unwittingly, b'shoigig, not b'mezid, you're going to just eat it because you're used to eating it.
Right, so that's, so before we do bedika, we're not worried about that. No, we always.
And when you do b'dikas chametz at night, I don't care if you eat it. Gesundheit, get rid of the chametz, eat it. I don't care if you eat your chametz. If you do Erev Pesach in the morning, but here you're not allowed to eat chametz anymore. If you do b'dikas chametz in the previous times,
Right, because normally then you say you're doing it because you don't want to eat.
Right.
You might, it's just the opposite.
no. You're asking a question. The whole b'dikas chametz is not to eat it.
Right.
No, that means like this. Very good question. He's saying the whole b'dikas chametz is not to eat it, according to Tosfos. So what's Rabbi Yehuda doesn't know that? Rabbi Yehuda means you're going to eat it right now. Usually we say you got to get rid of your house from chametz before Pesach, so that throughout Pesach, when you may come across chametz, you shouldn't eat it, right? Remember, without b'dikas chametz, there could be chametz on your counter because it was bottled, right? Midayraisa. So you come down chalamayr in the morning, you see a bagel, right, and you don't even think, you eat it. By doing b'dikas chametz, to a whole Pesach you won't come to eat it. But Rabbi Yehuda is choshesh something else. During the b'dikah,
Right,
when you find it, when you're holding it, you have it in your hand. You have it in your hand, right? And you may. We'll soon see the Chachamim really vehemently disagree with that, for an obvious reason that the Gemara is going to explore. So it's an interesting argument. What the Gemara is now going to do, the rest of the sugya, basically till the Mishnah, is compare Rabbi Yehuda's views in the rest of Shas. In other words, we're going to dig out from our knowledge all the Mishnahs where Rabbi Yehuda argues with the Chachamim about similar situations. And the Gemara is going to struggle with this because what's going to appear is that Rabbi Yehuda actually had the opposite view in other areas. What we're learning here is as follows. When you have to do a mitzvah, the Rabbanon, a good thing, but it may bring you by mistake to violate an Isur min HaTorah, Rabbi Yehuda is saying, no, don't do it. The Chachamim are saying, I'm fine. The Gemara is going to now bring up one case after another case after another case where this premise is being contradicted. So we're now going to be, this sugya is going to be dealing now with other issues outside of Pesach to see what Rabbi Yehuda's view is, because we always assume that the Tanoim, it wasn't like they had a debate and like, I'm in the mood of saying Asur. It's not moods. They had perspectives. They had a mahalach that pervaded their whole life. It was a shita. It was a shita sachayim, how they looked at everything. How they looked at halacha. And it wasn't only in halacha, it was in ruchnius also. It was a shita that this Tana had, that Tana had. In other words, not every machlokas in Shas is an isolated, self-contained issue. Rabbi Yehuda today is in a very stringent mood. We're making an issue today. It didn't work that way. You know, like sometimes today your teacher is in a challenging mood. Don't start up. Chas v'shalom. It's ridiculous to assume that. That's not the yisoid of Torah, which is hi chachmaschem u'benaschem le'nei kol ha'amim. There's a mahalach, there's a derech, there's a way you have to understand it. There's a perspective. You can go deeper and deeper and deeper. And that's what the Gemara is now going to be struggling with. Umi gaza Rabbi Yehuda. Is this really the profile of Rabbi Yehuda? Did Rabbi Yehuda really make a gzeira that you shouldn't deal with forbidden food? Why? Dilma asel mechel menei. Because I'm afraid that you're going to eat it. That's what we learn. Rabbi Yehuda says no contact with forbidden food because you may come to eat it. That's clearly what he believes here. That's how he doesn't say it clearly, but that's how the Gemara explained his svara. We wanted to explain what his svara was. Rabbi Yehuda said, you're not allowed to be boidik after the 6th hour. Chacham said, you have to be boidik. What's the svara? The svara is he's afraid you may come to eat it. Chacham said, you're not afraid you're going to come to eat it. So that's the word. Dil Masel V'Atanan, we have a Mishnah. The Mishnah says very interesting story. Mishakara v'Oimer, once they were makar of the carbon Oimer, Yoitzin, you can go out that day, Umoitzin Shuki Yerushalayim, and you find that the marketplaces of Yerushalayim, Heimalayim Kemach, are filled with flour, v'Kali. Kali is oven roasted grain that was roasted in the oven. You find it in Yerushalayim. Shaloi beratzin chachamim heinoisin. But this was a fact, but it was not the desire of the chachamim. Divrei Reb Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, beratzin chachamim hayoisin. It was absolutely beratzin chachamim. There was absolutely no problem. In other words, the Mishnah in Maseches Menachos, Daf Samach Zayin, is describing a sociological fact, which used to work, which was basically this. Everybody knows that on the 16th day of Nisan, there was an obligation. There's an obligation in Torah and Parshas Emer. You have to bring a unique type of carbon, and that is, you take the new barley that just grew, the new crop of barley you take, and that barley had to be grinded. The kernels had to be grinded into flour. This is barley flour, and it had to be refined again and again and again, 13 times. That's how refined the flour had to be. And then the kohen took a kaimitz, a fistful of this flour, burnt it on the mizbeach, and the rest of the flour was eaten by the kohanim in the Beis HaMikdash. And the moment that happened, all the new crop in the whole Eretz Yisrael, some say even Chutz La'aretz, became mutter. And this is called Chodosh, right? Chodosh. Before this happened, I'm not allowed to eat my new crop. So if I go to my field and there's wheat and there's barley and there's oats and there's rye and there's spelt, I'm not allowed to harvest it and eat it. Why? Because I have to wait for the carbon oimer to be nikriv in the Beis HaMikdash, which was on the 16th day of Nisan, the 2nd day of Pesach. And after the carbon oimer, that's when I can eat the new Chodosh. Till that point, I have to eat the old stuff. Not the ones that grew right now from the earth, that were planted after last year Pesach. So anything I'm eating is things from the old. It's called Yasham. The Chodosh is forbidden. Comes the Mishnah and says, you would go out that day, 11 o'clock in the morning to the streets of Yerushalayim. It's the first day of Chol HaMoed, and you found everywhere fresh Chodosh, flour and grain that was already roasted in the oven, kali, they would take grain, they would roast it in the oven. So Reb Meir says the Chacham were very upset about this. Why were they upset about this? Because in order to have flour from the new crop, it means you had to harvest it before Yom Tov. You had to grind it before Yom Tov. You had to prepare it before Yom Tov. And that means people were handling with chadash before it was mutter to eat. Rabbi Yehuda says it was perfectly fine. Why did Rabbi Yehuda say it's perfectly fine? What's the issue here? So the Gemara says, V'loi ka gazer Rabbi Yehuda dilma asila meichel menei. The main issue here is, what's the problem? The problem is, are you going to eat it? Reb Meir holds, if you harvest it before and you're handling with it, you may take a kernel and eat it. People used to eat grains as snacks. This was part of it. When it's soft, you can eat it. You take a seed or you take the grain, and people would munch on it. It was a snack, like we do.
That's not the chometz, it's not the problem.
Chodosh, it's chodosh.
Yes, but it's not the chometz. I understand it's chometz.
So the question is, well, what's the difference? This is asur, and this is asur. But Rabbi Yehuda says the Chachamim were fine. I don't care if you harvest it, as long as you don't eat it. And the moment Chodosh becomes mutter, the flour is ready. We see here that Rabbi Yehuda's shitta is, you're not afraid that people may come to eat it. You trust them that they're going to remember and be conscientious not to eat it.
So what's the punishment for chodesh? Let's say they eat it. So what do you do after minute? In one case is a chorus.
No, chametz erev Pesach is not chorus. It's a lav, and chodesh is a lav. It's both a lav. If he's afraid by chodesh,
The same type of love?
yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. It's not chorus. It's not chorus. Remember, like Rashi, even the Chachamim say you're not allowed to be boidik in the middle of Pesach because of chorus. Right? But we're talking about Erev Pesach.
So it's a biblical law.
It's a biblical law. You're not allowed to eat lechem v'koli v'charma loy soichlu ad etzem hayom hazeh.
Doing a korban is what you're saying. About.
After the korban you're allowed to eat it.
I'm saying before, for korban's before the 6th hour on Pesach, or after the 6th hour on Pesach, or here Kaddish, before it's permitted, there's a lot, and that means a korban to bring a.
No, not a korban. Just a lav.
So what is so it's just a law.
Malchus.
So that's why I asked before. It's not malchus midrabanan. It's malchus.
Yes. It's a lav min ha-Torah.
That doesn't involve the same number of whips. It's a different.
No, same.
It's the same. But
Same.
It's a biblical.
A biblical prohibition to eat chadash before the time. Yeah, before the time.
I was asking on the ownership.
Yeah.
It's
And after the Churban Beis HaMikdash, there's no korban noimus. You have to wait for the day to finish. You have to wait for Tazayin, yeah. You have to wait for Tazayin, yeah.
They couldn't use obviously the chodesh for baking matzah or anything like that.
You could never use Chodesh for baking matzah. Unless you baked it the second day of Pesach, then you're good.
It's in the middle.
The flour for Chodesh you can't use. You have to use the old flour. Yeah. Anything that became mutter from last Chodesh is good. But if you planted your grain in the month of Tishrei, or Cheshvan, or the end of the summer, right? People plant their grain. Or the winter, the fall, that new crop of grain you couldn't eat, even though it grew until after the second day of Pesach, when there was a korban omer. That's called Chodesh. When you go to the stores and you see Yashon, Chodesh, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about when you buy a babka cake and you'll see on it Yashon, it basically means that it's the old grain, it's not the new crop of grain.
Would the same din apply here according to the Yehuda with Kadosh in an area which was outside the hearing, the call that went out from Yerushalayim to Makah?
Yeah, so Chodesh was, the question is, was Chodesh Asur and Chutz La'aretz or not? That's a machlokes hatanoim.
Even in Eretz Yisrael, would everybody know?
So they had to wait till the end of the day. You're right. They had to wait.
So that was.
You're right, yeah.
And the Rabbanan said that was a Gezerah de Rabbanan.
Right. Omar Rabbi.
So Yushan and chodesh and Chutz is their book.
It's a machlokes if it's Chiyuv and Chutz La'aretz or not. If Chodesh is Chutz La'aretz or not. The Raisa. Yeah. Omar Rabbi said, you're right. I'll explain to you the difference. Shiny Chodesh. Chodesh is different. Mitoich shelo yitarta lo ela al yidei kituf hu zachor. They didn't just allow them to harvest it with a sickle. They obligated them to harvest it before the korban omer with their hands. And that's a whole different story than using a sickle. When you're harvesting it with your hands, it's a tremendous zecher. You're going to remember that it's asur, and therefore you won't come to eat it. That's why Rabbi Yehuda was fine with it. Because there was this reminder right there. Usually you use a sickle, but till they brought the omer, they were not allowed to use a sickle. And the reason is because there's an expression in the Chumash. V'haveisem es omer reishis k'tzirchem el hakoyen. The first harvest you should bring to the kohen. So we learn from here that the omer has to be the first harvest. So you're not allowed to cut grain Stam, unless you don't cut it, which means you don't use a sickle. If you do it with your hands, it's a shinui, so then they allowed you to do it. Because they allowed you to do it only with your hand, because if you do it with a sickle, it's forbidden. Because the Torah says and indicates that the first cutting has to be brought to the kohen, which means you're not allowed to stam cut. Not only you're not allowed to eat, you're not allowed to even cut. You're not allowed to even cut. The first cutting has to be brought to the kohen. So I can't stand in my field and cut. Forget about eating. So the only way they allowed you to do it is, if minat Torah, it's not called regular cutting, which means you do it with your hands, not with a sickle. It's a shinoi. So minat Torah, that's not called ktsira, because it's just like tearing it out. So therefore you're allowed to do it. Because that shinoi is demanded, then we're not afraid a person is going to harvest it and eat it. So Rabbi said, we're chametz, that doesn't happen. You find chametz, and it's a regular piece of chametz. And inadvertently, you're hungry, you're going to come to eat it. Amalei Abaye tells Rabbi, excuse me, tinech b'shas ktifa. This works while you're harvesting. But chine v'harkada ma'ikal meimar. You finished harvesting. What happens afterwards? You thresh it, right? You take a flail and you beat. Like we learned earlier, you beat the stalk and you separate the kernels from the chaff. And then you take the kernels and you do what's called tchina. Tchina means you grind it into flour. And then you take the flour and you do what's called harkada. You sift the flour. Now, forget about the sickle. Now there's no zecher. Now you could eat it. So why would Rabbi Yehuda allow it? Meile b'shas kituf, during harvesting, there's something to remind you. But not during grinding and sifting. So the Gemara says, Holei kasha. It's not a question, because tchina b'rechaya diyat. Here too they did it with a deviation. When they grinded it, they used a hand mill rather than a water mill. A hand mill is much more complex and more tedious than a water mill. They used a hand mill and harkada sifting. They did al gabe nofa, on the back of the sieve. They took the sift and they turned it over and they did it upside down. And therefore there was a deviation also in the process of grinding and sifting throughout. So now we're not afraid a person is going to come to eat it, because everything was done in a unique fashion to remind you that you're not allowed to eat it. And therefore Rabbi Yehuda says it was not a problem. Where chametz, he is afraid. The Gemara says, 1 second. That's the point, that they used to harvest. Remember, people needed an edge. In economy, you need an edge. So they used to do it before with a shinui, and they would prepare flour, and everybody was very excited. And remember, Yerushalayim was filled with customers. Oile regalim. Yeah, exactly. And the supply was smaller than the demand. Exactly. And it did well. And also the people they wanted food. They wanted food, and sometimes the old crop, maybe there was a shortage, whatever it is. So that's why they used to do it. It was very good for business. It was good for everybody. It was win-win. So Reb Meir says, yes, they did it, but they didn't ask permission. They were bad boys. They were troublemakers. And Reb Yehuda said, absolutely not. You're wrong. The Chachamim completely were fine with it. So Abai is telling us why. Rabbi is telling us why, because there was a shinui. So, therefore, this doesn't contradict Reb Yehuda by chametz. Reb Yehuda is afraid that people are going to eat. He is afraid. Here, he's not afraid because he's forcing. They're enforcing deviations that make you conscientious and cautious not to eat it. Reb Meir probably feels that despite the shinui, the hunger, people will still snack. Reb Meir is more stringent. Yeah, Reb Meir is much more stringent, which we'll soon see the problem with that, because Reb Meir is the main disputant of Rabbi Yehuda. Reb Meir and Rabbi Yehuda are the two colleagues that usually argue. So whenever the Chachamim argue with Rabbi Yehuda, Reb Meir is one of those people. It's just Reb Meir has more people on his side. So we're going to discuss that in a moment, that Reb Meir is also contradicting himself, because in our Mishnah, Reb Meir says you're allowed to do b'dikas chametz, which means I'm not afraid you're going to eat it. And over there, he is afraid. We're going to get to Reb Meir in a moment, but now we're focusing on Reb Yehuda. Frag the Gemara Elahad Tanan. 1 second. Abaye continues his refutation of Rabbi. Your answer is really very limited, because we have a Mishnah. Koitzrin Beis Hashlachim. Beis Hashlachim means a field that cannot live off rainwater. It has to be irrigated by hand, by human intervention. It's called Beis Hashlachim. There are fields that the rain suffices. There are fields that you have to irrigate by hand, meaning you have to arrange for water to come through canals to irrigate, to water your field. That's called Beis Hashlachim. You're allowed to harvest grain of such a field before the carbon omer, v'sheba'amakim, grain in valleys, avaloi goitchin. But you can make piles of them. You can harvest them, not piles. And these are harvesting without a shinu, without a deviation. Meaning you could do it with your hand. What's the svara here? You could do it with a sickle, not only with your hand. What's the svara? The svara is a very interesting svara. Take a look in Rashi. Shal beis ha'amakim. Tevua hakdela bein ha'amakim. Grain that grows in the valleys, in deep places. V'shal beis ha'amakim. V'shal beis ha'amakim. V'taimim mefarish. The reason is in Mishnah in Menachos Ayin Aleph. Okay. Kosuv echad oimer. We have a contradiction. One pasuk says, and it's really the same pasuk in Parshas Emor. One pasuk says, I'm going to quote the pasuk: Ki savoyu ala aretz asher ani noisen lachem uktzartem es ktsira, v'havesem es oimer reish ktsirchem alakayim. When you come to the land that I will give you, you should harvest its harvest. You should cut the grain, and then bring an oimer, the beginning of your cutting, to the kohen. We have here a contradiction, very subtle. First it says when you come to the land, you should harvest the grain, and then bring an oimer to the kohen, which means you harvest the grain, and then you take one oimer. An oimer is not a big measurement. An oimer is 1/10 of an ephah, which is the volume of 43.2 eggs. Right? That's what it is. 43.2 eggs. And somewhere between 8 and 12 ounces, depends Reb Chaim Na, the Chazon Ish, but somewhere there. So you cut it and you take an oimer to the kohen. What does this sound like? You cut everything and you take an oimer. But then the pasuk continues, "V'havesem es oimer reishis ktsirchem el hakohen." The first cut should be brought to the kohen, which means that's the first cut. You're not allowed to cut before. That's what Rashi is saying. Kosuv echad oimer uktzartem es ktsira v'havesem. Cut and bring. Alma, mutter liktzer koydem la'omer. You could cut before the carbon omer. Kosav echad omer reishis ktsirchem. The mashma, shehu koydem l'kol kotzer. This is the first harvest. Haketzad. How do we reconcile? So the Mishnah says, Mimakim shata mevi omer iyat kotzer koydem loy. From those fields where you're allowed to bring the omer from, you're not allowed to harvest before the carbon. Ubimakim she'iyat mevi omer at kotzer. But from those regions where you can't bring the carbon omer, you're allowed to cut. Utnan bepeda kol karbonas. We learned in Menachos, ein meviin soilus lamincha. You can't bring flour for a carbon mincha to Hashem, including the carbon omer. Loime beis hasvolin, not from a field that needs fertilizer. Loime beis hashlachim, not from a field that needs irrigation by hand. V'loime beis ha'amakim, not from a field in the depth of the valleys. Because the grain that grows is not choice. It's not very good. And for a mincha, we want the best. What do we see from here? We see from here that there were fields that you're not allowed to use a sickle. You can only do it with your hand. Those are the fields from where you could bring a carbon omer. There it says reishis ktsirchem. Fields where you can't bring a carbon omer, even though b'di'evet, if you bring it from there, it's yoytza. But lechatchila you can't bring. Over there you're allowed to use a sickle. And you don't have to use your hand because the Torah clearly indicates that there are places where you could cut the harvest before the omer. And the Gemara continues, and the Gemara says that this Mishnah is following Rabbi Yehuda. In other words, Rabbi Yehuda holds that there are places where you can harvest the omer without your hands. You can use a sickle. So there's no shinui. And still, he says it's b'ratzon chachamim. This completely undermines what Rabbi said, that the reason by omer he's satisfied is because it's done with a shinui. What are you going to say? The Mishnah clearly says you're allowed to harvest these fields without a deviation. So you can't tell me that it's talking about another shita who's mekel. It says clearly that's going according to Rabbi Yehuda, even though eating this tvu would be asur till after the carbon omer, and it's according to Rabbi Yehuda. That means Rabbi Yehuda says you're allowed to deal with food without a deviation, and we're not afraid you're going to eat it, which contradicts his perspective here. Rashi says, haleka hasam shinuya. You can't say over there that there's a shinui. There's no shinui. The hakoitzrin ktani. It says you can harvest, which means b'magal with a sickle. The Gemara there proves that this Mishnah follows Rabbi Yehuda. Midiktani Sefer, because it says in the end of the Mishnah, Anshe Yericha koitzrin lefnei omer. The people of Yericha used to cut before the omer. V'loy michu b'yadam chachamim, and the chachamim didn't protest. V'amrin man shamatlu the amar michu v'loy michu Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara proves over there that this Mishnah follows Rabbi Yehuda, so therefore Rabbi answer seems refuted by this Mishnah. Elamar Abayis says, I'm going to explain to you. There's a different svara. Chadash badal minei, chametz loy badal minei. That's the difference. New grain that is asur, a person is separated. He's detached from it. Chametz, he's not detached. What does it mean? Chadash is asur all year. It's asur a whole winter, a whole autumn, a whole fall, till spring, till the carbon it's asur. People are used to the fact when you see grain, you have to stop and say, I'm not allowed to snack from these kernels. It's chadash. Badal minei, we're detached. There's only a few months that it becomes permissible. But chametz, 365 days a year, 7 days a week, besides the 7 days of Pesach. You're not detached from it. So there's a much bigger chash that inadvertently, Rabbi Yehuda says, when you buy the chametz, 2 hours ago, you were allowed to eat chametz, right? 2 hours ago, you were allowed to eat chametz. Now you're hungry, you see a piece of chametz, you buy it, you may come to eat it. That's the whole svara here. That's the chash. It's not that by chadash there's a shinui. Even when there's no shinui, Rabbi Yehuda is not afraid. Omar Rava says, 1 second. The Rabbi Yehuda, kasha, the Rabbanan, like kasha. You're focusing on the argument in Rabbi Yehuda, the inconsistency. What about the rabbis on the rabbis? Meaning, Reb Meir was one of the people who would argue with Rabbi Yehuda. Reb Meir says you are chayshish by chadash that they're going to eat it. That's why it's shalai b'ratzon chachamim. So why by chametz is Reb Meir unconcerned, not concerned? He says you're allowed to do b'dikas chametz. L'chayre ma da chadash, which they're not detached, which they're detached from. He answers it. Reb Meir certainly chametz. So Rava says, you're missing one point. He's telling his friend Abai, you're missing one point. Rabbi Yehuda loy kasha kedeshaninon. Rabbi Yehuda is not contradicting Rabbi Yehuda like you said, which I agree with, that chadash people are detached, chametz people are not detached. The Rabbanan nami loy kasha. I'll explain to you why the rabbis are not being inconsistent. And here Rava says, the famous svara, Hu atzmai mechazer alav l'sarfai, meichal ka'achel minei. What's b'dikas chametz? What's b'dikas chametz? What are you doing when you're doing b'dikas chametz? You're walking around with a candle and you're looking for chametz. Why? Mechazer alav l'sarfai. You're trying to burn the chametz. Are you really afraid that the person is going to come eat it? Mela by chadash, what are you doing? You're harvesting grain in order to make flour, which you want to eat. Here, I'm afraid that by mistake, you're going to forget and you're going to eat a kernel, you're going to eat a piece of grain, you're going to munch on it, and you're going to be over. By chametz, Reb Meir was tiny, the Rabbanan are saying, what's the point of b'dikas chametz? It's not like I'm walking around in my house and I find a piece of chametz and I eat it. I'm doing b'dikas chametz. And you'll ask the person, what are you doing? I'm looking for chametz. Why are you looking for chametz? You want to eat it? Chas v'shalom, I want to burn it. I want to get rid of it. I want to throw it out of the house. I want to be mekayim tashbisu. So when a person, his whole objective, his whole purpose of what he's doing is the whole tachlis is l'sayfai. I'm not suspicious. I'm not afraid that he's going to forget and eat it. Because if he's just aware, unless he's in a comatose state, if he's just aware of what he's doing, his whole function is to get rid of the chametz. Not only not to eat it, to burn it. So you're not chayshed that a person has come to eat it, because of course he could come to eat it by mistake. But the whole inyan that he's doing it is to get rid of the chametz, to get it out of the house. So melech hachamim are not chayshed, and yet Rabbi Yehuda is chayshed. Rabbi Yehuda is saying even though you're doing b'dikas chametz to burn it, you still have to be afraid that by mistake you're going to eat it. But we see clearly there is no contradiction between Chadash and Chametz. Why is it not a contradiction for Rabbi Yehuda? Like Abaye said, because Chadash badal minei, Chametz loy badal minei, and for the Chachamim it's not a shinui because Chadash you may come to eat because why not? You're just harvesting it and you may forget. But Chametz, since the whole thing you're doing is getting rid of it, so therefore we're not afraid that you're going to come eat it. Rashi says, Hu atzme mechazer alav l'sarfei. Afal gav de ba'alma gazrinon b'davar sha'asuk b'shelo yoshet lepiv. Even though usually we're afraid, the Chachamim are afraid that when you're handling with something that's forbidden, you're going to put it in your mouth. We are afraid, and that's why by Chadash the Chachamim did not want them to harvest it. Hache b'bdikas chametz leka lemegzar. Why? The hu atzmei kol iskoi zeh b'chametz eini ela mechazer alav l'sarfei. Because the whole mitzias of looking for chametz is only to destroy it. Ein lecha zikaron leisur gadol mizeh. You don't have a better zikaron, a better commemoration, something reminding you better that you're not allowed to eat it. You know that you don't need a psasim and how you do it, when you do it. The whole inyan, the whole reason you're touching chametz, the whole reason you're looking for chametz is to be an oikim and ashayrish, to get rid of it. So ein lecha zikaron leisur gadol mizeh. That's the whole nekuda. Huh? Apparently, Rabbi Yehuda feels that people could really be in a dreamlike state.
He's actually using this sword, but only for Chodesh.
Huh?
He's actually using the same sword.
Rabbi Yehuda holds a Chodesh is mutter. So we said why? Because Chodesh badal minei. So, no, badal minei a whole year. Badal minei a whole year. In other words, Chodesh people are afraid of. But Chametz, that's a different word. But Chametz people eat a whole year. Right?
In the first case.
The first case, because it was a shinui.
He's holding a candle. The whole reason.
He's holding a candle. He's saying that's the shinui. That's the shinui. That he's holding a candle. You're saying like the first vart.
Yeah.
But the first vart we refuted. The first vart is not a must. The first vart was refuted. That's before we brought up the shit of the Rabbana. Right? That's before they brought up the shit of the Rabbana.
There's no shinus. There's no
Huh?
There's no issue with shinus.
Yeah. The some Seifer Tainis, there's a Rashi Masechta Menachos who says that according to the Chacham you have to be by the Chametz in the middle of Pesach, which is not like Rashi says here. So people struggle. What's Rashi's opinion? So the Chacham Seifer says that once the Gemara introduces this svara, who atzma mechazer alav l'soifei achel ka'achel menei, then Rashi understood that the Chachamim could say you could be by the Chametz in the middle of Pesach also, even if it's an Issur Kares, because the whole union of B'dikas Chametz is something that will prevent you from eating it according to the Chachamim. Stam, I thought there is an interesting machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon when it comes to Shabbos about davar she'eino miskaven. Davar she'eino miskaven, according to Rabbi Shimon, is mutter. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's aser. Which means as follows. Let's say on Shabbos, I do something completely without intent. Completely without intent. You're schlepping a bench in the bungalow colony, and you make a furrow. You can make a furrow in the earth, but it's not my purpose. I'm trying to get a bench over to your house. I want to eat there, but I'm putting it on the sand, so it may make a furrow, right? What's the What's the halacha? The halacha is like Reb Shimon. Davar she'eino miskaven is mutter, unless it's psik reisha, which means it's inevitable. It's for sure going to make a furrow. But if yes or not, there, we walk on grass. Is it possible that the grass is coming out? Of course it's possible, but everybody does it. You don't think twice. Why? It's called davar she'eino miskaven. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. Rabbi Yehuda holds. Right? Yeah. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda holds that davar she'eino miskaven is actually aser, which is a big chiddush. The halacha is not like that. The halacha is like Reb Shimon. The davar she'eino miskaven is mutter. That's the halacha today. But davar, unless again, if it's psik reisha, if it's mamash inevitable, so then it's part of the kavana. But if it's a davar she'eino miskaven, Rabbi Yehuda holds that it's aser. Similar machlokes is malacha she'eino tzricha legufa. Rabbi Yehuda holds you're chayev on such a malacha, meaning a malacha where you do it, but you're not interested in the guf of the malacha. You have a side agenda. For example, there's a mouse in the house; it's dead, and then you throw it out to Rosh Hashanah. You're not interested in carrying it, right? You're not interested in the gufa malacha. You don't want it to be. You just want to get it out of your house. Similar, that's called malacha she'eino tzricha legufa. So, Reb Shimon holds that min ha'torah yipater. Rabbi Yehuda says no, you're chayiv. You have to be a carbon chatas, even malacha she'eino tzricha legufa. Yeah. Okay. This is Rabbi Yehuda. Huh? Yeah. Rabbi Yehuda says davar she'eino miskaven is aser. Midrabanan, but it's aser. Yeah. It's not mamash the same machlokes like malacha she'eino tzricha legufa, but it's on the same mahalach. Tosfos compares the two in Masechah Shabbos. We have a story in Masechta Shabbos, Lamed Gimel, a famous story that a few Tanoim was sitting and speaking about Rome, right? So Rabbi Yehuda started to praise them. He said they built up beautiful cities. There's bathing houses everywhere. There's bridges. They're very good. The Romans are very, very good. They did wonderful things. Reb Shimon said, please, they did it all for themselves. They're self-centered, narcissistic, hungry animals who are just want power and tyranny. They did it all for themselves, Reb Shimon said. And Rabbi Yossi was quiet. So what happened? They said Rabbi Yossi has to go into exile. Reb Shimon has to be killed. This is Rabbi. And he ran into the cave for 12 years. And Rabbi Yehuda, they sublimated. Yeah. You see the Tzad HaShav in all this? Huh? The question is when you do something without kavana, when you do something without intent, okay? Take Rome, yeah? Their machlokes about Rome is the same machlokes Masechta Shabbos. Reb Shimon says, davar she'eino miskaven mutter. You know why? I couldn't care less. If there's no kavana, it's nothing. If there's no kavana, it's nothing. Reb Shimon says, Rome, I don't care they did nice things. Their kavana was horrible. It's worthless. Rabbi Yehuda holds no. Davar she'eino miskaven is still aser. Why? Because you did it. The ikka is the maisa, not the kavana. But Mela, even though there was no kavana, you made a furry, you didn't want to. I don't care. But you made a chfir. Rabbi Yehuda says it's also. Malacha shein tzricha leguf. I don't care why, but you did a malacha. Rabbi Yehuda says if the chitzonius of the malacha was there, it's good. It's a real malacha. Therefore, you could praise Rome. Okay. So now when you're doing b'dikas chametz, right? According to Rabbi Yehuda, we have a metzias. It's not mamash the same nekuda. I'm just comparing it in other words, the thought is the same. Davar sheina miskaven. Rabbi Yehuda says you're doing you're not even. Chachamim say, what do you mean? You're doing b'dikas chametz. How are you going to eat it? Your whole kavana is mechazer of l'sayfer. That's if you look at the kavana. If you look at the kavana, it's a joke. The guy's trying to get rid of chametz. He's going to eat the chametz. That's if you're looking at the kavana of b'dikas chametz. If you look at the maisa, what is he doing? He's picking up bread. So mainly Rabbi Yehuda who says that the kabiyah maisa and the kavana is really doesn't affect it. Because even davar she'ena miskaven on Shabbos is still asur. Why? Because I acknowledge that a maisa without a kavana is still a significant maisa. So the maisa of b'dikas chametz itself, that's the nekuda. And even if a person is not thinking much, it's still the zelda of b'dikas chametz. Mainly Rabbi Yehuda is choishish for achila. I'll call upon him l'chidudi. Huh? Yeah. Mesachas Sukkah.
He doesn't agree with it.
Okay.
Now it makes sense. It's better.
No, because I was thinking, I learned the Gemara, I was thinking, why would Rabbi Yehuda argue? It's such a good svara. It's such a powerful svara.
So the Gemara doesn't bring Kavanah here at all.
It's not a concept of Dover Shein and Meskaven, of course. We're talking about B'dikas Chametz. It's not about Kavanah of Malacha. I'm just bringing the Nekuda that a Maisa without Kavanah by Rabbi Yehuda has the whole Toikif. According to the Pshimen, without Kavanah, the Maisa is not a Maisa. It's not called Melechas Shabbos.
So maybe the Rabbanim hold like that. It's not an issue.
Huh?
The Rabbanim hold like this. Like
Reb Shimon was Pnimi Satayra, Mara the Sefer HaZayar. He looks at the Kavanah, yeah. He looks at the Kavanah. Yeah, no, the Ikka is the Pnimi, is the Kavanah of it. If it's Dover Sheina Miskaven, it's not a Dover. It's not a Dover. It's not a Melechas Shabbos, because it doesn't have the Tzura, doesn't have the Pnimius of it. You did everything, but that's not Negeya. Melacha Sheina Tzrucha Lagufa. Over there, you had Kavanah. But you didn't have kavanah for the malacha. It's still mutter. Min ha-Torah. It's mamish mutter. You did mamish the malacha, but not for that person. You shut off the light because there's a chayla who can't sleep. Somebody can't sleep. Says, please, you shut the light. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you're chayiv min ha-Torah to be in carbon chatos. According to Rabbi Shimon, you're potter. You're potter. Why? You did the malacha and you had kavanah. There it's even more. But because you didn't need the malacha, you weren't interested in the malacha, you're already potter. Potter aval aser.
so most of the
Davar sheina miskaven is much more, because over there you didn't want to do the malacha. So over there it's mutter. Over there, even with the rabbanon it's mutter, according to Reb Shimon.
so today by all the people that like in Shenishba, whatever it is, they don't have even kavanah to do malacha.
Ein achaname.
They just say
Ein achaname. Ein achaname.
they turn on and off and
Ein
they
achaname.
drive and they enjoy the life.
Yeah.
They didn't want to
There's a vart from the Belzer Rav, I think, the Sar Shalom, one of the I saw, that it says in Masechah Sukkah that Reb Shimon says, "Yichayilni lifter es kol olam kulim min adin." I can exempt the whole world from din, from judgment. Says why? Because Reb Shimon holds davar she'ena miskaven mutter. Reb Shimon says that ultimately any Jew who doesn't have Eira, it's really davar she'ena miskaven. In other words, deep down, he's not interested in the Aveda. He's looking for some enjoyment. He's looking to numb his pain. He's angry. He's upset. The pnimius of a Yid wants to do Hashem's Ratzon. Like the Rambam says in Ilchus Geirish and Perek Beis. So Meli says ultimately it's Dover Sheina Miskaven. Since Dover Sheina Miskaven, so he could dismiss everything. That's what he says. Geschmack of art. That's the pnimius HaTorah. Rabbi Yehuda holds the Maisa is the Iker. A Maisa u Iker. The Maisa, that's the Tzur, that's the Vart. I don't care about Tzuras HaMalacha. I care about the Chaimer HaMalacha. And the truth is, as we'll see later, so I don't know if it's masim to this sugi mamad. I'm just putting it together. I'll call upon him as we call it l'chidudi. But we'll see later in the machlokes of Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim about biur chametz, we'll see how this mamash plays out in halacha lemaisa. What tashbisu means. We'll see. We'll see in a later sugya that Rabbi Yehuda is going l'shitase in a lot of issues, in a lot of areas. Yeah. Yeah. The Sanhedrin continued till almost the end of the Gemara. Yes. In Eretz Yisrael. In Eretz Yisrael and in Bavel. The Sanhedrin went into Galus also. Yeah. But by the time of Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir, there was a real functioning Sanhedrin. It was after the Churban Beis Hamikdash. It wasn't in Yerushalayim anymore. The Sanhedrin went into Galus. It went from Yerushalayim to Yavna. It went to Tzipori, went back to Yavna. It went to a lot of places. There's a whole sugya in Rosh Hashanah. But there was a Sanhedrin. And the Sanhedrin continued for another few hundred years. But then it couldn't be sustained anymore. To have a Sanhedrin, you had to have Smicha, Ish Mepeyish, from Moshe Rabbeinu. You had to have Talmidim. It was just the Gzeiris. The Jews were getting scattered. They couldn't do it anymore. So they were Mavatal it.
Whenever you see the Chacham Amram, there was also the Sanhedrin.
Yeah. So these debates are not Stamab's debates somewhere in a corner. These were debates of the Chachmei Sanhedrin. They were members of the Sanhedrin.
Every machlokes was whenever you see machlokes, it was.
It's usually, this was an argument of Chachmei Sanhedrin. I mean, was it the argument right before the vote? Was it an argument previously? But it was an argument that, and they had to paskin la halacha. And
always like a Rosh Sanhedrin.
Always. Yeah, we know of the names. Yeah. You had the Nasi of the Sanhedrin, you had the Av Bezdin of the Sanhedrin, you had 71 people who had to make every major decision. When there was a decision about halacha, should we make this gzeira, shouldn't we make this gzeira? Is this the pshat in Torah, is this not the pshat in Torah? Should we make this takana? Chanukah candles. We like to, who decided we light Chanukah? We're reading the Megillah. All these things. These were takanas, and there were debates. Don't eat chicken with milk. Rabbi Yossi HaGalili, the Gemara says in Chulin, he held you're allowed to eat chicken with milk. He ate chicken with milk. He said this gzeira is a foolish gzeira. Doesn't make sense. There was a vote. Rabbi Yossi HaGalili used to eat chicken with milk. The Gemara says clearly, you're allowed to eat chicken with milk, b'nat Torah. He felt that there's no need to compare chicken to meat. The Chachamim felt, no, chicken is by people considered meat, and if you do chicken burgers, chicken cheeseburgers, you're going to end up doing meat cheeseburgers. But this was a real machlokes.
So when you stop eating chametz,
same thing. When do you stop eating chametz? Yeah, same machlokes. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda. When the issur of chametz begins, does the issur of chametz begin? Yeah. They had to debate. Yeah.
Is this why the Sfarad don't eat the fish? The same reason the fish with
No. Then there's later generations. Everything changed because then it's local stuff. Once the Sanhedrin was gone, everything became localized. So you'll have in this country, you have this. In this country, it's not. There was no central body to be Mechayev Klal Yisrael. They couldn't do it anymore. So kitnius, in the Middle Ages, the Ashkenazim assert kitnius on Pesach, right? Like beans and rice, legumes, what's called. They assert it because their fields they used to grow together with wheat, and they saw a lot of problems. The Sephardic communities never assert it, so that's why they don't have a problem with rice. If it would have been by the Sanhedrin, then it would be everybody. There's no mitzias. The Sanhedrin said something. B'dikas chametz is only Ashkenazim. No such a thing. B'dikas chametz is every Jew. Why? Because it comes from the Sanhedrin. It comes from the Tanoim. All the takanas that come from then, you'll have every Jew. It'll be mechayev every Jew. There will never be differences. Anything that happened post that, for example, davening, you'll have nusach Sfard, nusach Ashkenaz, because it doesn't come from then.
So there were no different minhagim at the time? There's no such thing?
There could be different minhagim if the Sanhedrin didn't paskin.
Right, but once they passed it, there was no such thing.
There couldn't be, no. You were zaken mamre if you went against. You were zaken mamre. You didn't have a place in halacha. Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel argued. Once the halacha is like Beis Hillel, you have to follow like Beis Hillel.
Even the Bashem. The first mission in Shas that when Leo's sons wanted to become a kind, but it's a chachama, but it was just one.
Yeah.
So all the Tanur, all the names brought in
Sanhedrin.
All of them.
Most of them were in Sanhedrin. Yeah.
The Gemara and Mount, the missions. The Gemara also.
It depends, but most of them, yeah.
So when was the last? What would you say that the last year of the Sanhedrin
In the 400s, in the 5th century. Abaya and Rava, yeah. And by the way, Kiddush HaChodesh went. Kiddush HaChodesh was the same thing. There was no calendar. As long as there was a Sanhedrin, they had witnesses testify for the new moon. Same thing. They didn't use calendars. Yeah. Once the Sanhedrin was dissolved, so Kiddush HaChodesh was dissolved. They couldn't do it anymore. So now they had a calendar. That's what we use today. The Sanhedrin was dissolved, and the whole system changed. Since then, there was no mitzvah that the rabbi could make that's Mechayev Klal Yisrael. There's no such a thing anymore. There could be minhagim, there could be chumras, takanas, even Rabbeinu Gershom, all his takanas, about marriage and this, it was Mechayev his kehillas, no all the other kehillas. Ba'asr de Rav is Rav, Ba'asr de Shmuel, you follow the Bezdin. But there's no one Bezdin that's Mechayev Klal Yisrael, no such a thing anymore. They can't do it, you can't do it anymore, because for the Sanhedrin to function, you have to have that level of intensity and cohesiveness and unity that they couldn't sustain anymore. Talmidim who sit with years by the Rebbes and they have smicha, it was a whole system that they couldn't do anymore. To keep the Sanhedrin alive would have been a churban, because if it would have been hijacked, it's the end of it. The fact that they dissolved the Sanhedrin really saved the Jewish people. Just imagine in the 1800s, right? If there was a Sanhedrin and say the reform movement hijacked the Sanhedrin, what would have been done? What would have been? It would have been the end of halacha. They would have made a takana and that's it. It would have been the end. Because there was no Sanhedrin, so ad hayom hazeh, nobody can hijack Yiddishkeit. It was a tremendous thing. Because even if country after country falls to the reform, if there's one shtetl with a Rav and Talmidim and a yeshiva with a Shulchan Aruch, they're not changing. And that's what happened. Napoleon forced the Jews to make a Sanhedrin, but it was a fake thing. I mean, they did it, the Karen Eira. Yeah, he wanted there should be matter intermarriage, and they made a Sanhedrin to appease him, but it wasn't a real thing. It was. He made a Sanhedrin, intermarriage should be mutter, Eretz Yisrael is not part of the agenda. Napoleon wanted him to change a lot of things, and then he would accept them. And they had one of the G'dolei Hadar, Reb David, the Karen, one of the big poskim. He went and he basically ran it. He played a game. He made a Sanhedrin, but he knew it wasn't real. It was just in the early 1800s. But the fact that there was no Sanhedrin protected the integrity.
Wouldn't it have kept everyone together?
No, because if you haven't Sanhedrin,
also you might have had also people that.
But you didn't because there was an immune system. Because who got smicha to be in Sanhedrin? You had to get smicha from a previous generation, and those people had real Torah authority. When Rabbi Akiva is giving you smicha, when Rabbi Meir is giving you smicha, these were people who got smicha from the previous ones, all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu. They didn't give smicha they gave smicha to people who were Goinim and Yerushalayim and so forth. Can there be once in a while somebody who was corrupt? Yeah, but the system was a very holistic system. The system worked. Ad hayom hazeh it works.
So everyone respected this.
Yeah, even today you'll see it works. Let's say there's a Rav of an Orthodox shul, a real Orthodox shul. And one Shabbos he says, today we're bringing in the piano, right? And instead of tefillin on Sunday, we're putting on tefillin on Shabbos, yeah? He lives in America. Nobody can do anything. But what's going to happen? Nobody's going to take him seriously anymore as a authority of halacha because there's a Shulchan Aruch. Let's say even Chas v'Shalom, 10,000 rabbis go corrupt and they decide to change halacha. It's not going to affect Yiddishkeit. As long as you have the books, it's not going to affect it. It means this guy is not interested. Fine. Let's say he schleps with him 1 million people. That's what the Reform did. They schlepped millions of people with them. It didn't affect it. I mean, it affected it in reality, of course, for millions of Jews, but it didn't affect the purity and the integrity of halacha. As long as you have, we could trace back every minute. You go back to the Poskim, you go back to Shulchan Aruch, you go to the Torah, you go to the Rambam, you go to the Rishonim, you go to the Gemara, you go to the Mishnah, you go to the Psukim, you see it. I can't change it. Somebody could come tomorrow and say there's no chi of b'dikas chametz anymore now on the night of before Pesach. We're changing the halacha. It's going to be a joke. I mean, you could say it, but it's not real. The immune system of halacha is one that can't be broken by anybody because they wrote everything down. If they wouldn't have written down...
So if you write down the new things and then generations from now... That's going to be
no, but they didn't only write it down. They showed exactly how it developed. Exactly. They didn't just write down, this is the halacha you have to do b'dikas chametz. Yeah? The Gemara pointed out why, when, who said, where, why a candle, why not a candle, why by day, why. You understand how they did it? And we know the names. We know who said bittel, who said bdika, when, how, what. Everything is with names. So you can't forge it. You can't forge it. A guy today could say, I'm being mavatal halach. It's not going to be taken seriously.
Yet the Reform did schlep away.
But there was no argument to it. The Reform said it's a new age, and we want to be accepted. Yeah, they didn't have a real argument to it.
Oh, they didn't refute any of the.
What did they refute? What did they refute? What they said? Well, you're allowed to be machal Shabbos. What Shabbos is Sunday? They didn't. You understand?
Saying this is
yeah. So even if somebody wants to change halacha today, it's not going to have value because the system is so clear. Everything has a source. You can trace it back all the way to the generations. There's nothing, you can't play games with it. Anything we do or we don't do, we know exactly when it started, how it started, why it started, by whom it started. Now argue with that. If you can argue with that, fine. Yeah. There could be arguments that they'll argue today about quinoa. What's the bracha on quinoa? Fine. That's a real argument. Are you allowed to eat quinoa on Pesach? Okay. Those are good arguments, right? Those are real arguments. Things that come up today. Electricity questions, IVF. These are new things, but... So they had to dissolve the Sanhedrin. By dissolving the Sanhedrin and writing everything down in detail, everything is secure. Now nobody can play games with it. What am I going to do? Burn every Gemara in the world? Burn every Shulchan Aruch in the world? It's just not... that was the power. That's what they did. The vision was unbelievable how they did it. Because it secured the eternity. When you had a real Sanhedrin happening, you didn't need this because you had live communities and it was fine. It was very good. Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi already saw the beginning of the end, so he wrote everything down in Mishnayos. Why did he mention all the machloikasin? Because he wanted everybody to understand. This is this shitta, that's that shitta, v'chuli. Your typhus, it's very important this, how it worked.
I never realized when you see machloikas in the Gemara, I didn't realize.
Yeah. That's why the machloikasin are so important. People wonder, you learn all these machloikasin, like, what do you want? Just tell me what to do. No, they don't tell you what to do. If they would tell you what to do, I can also make a book today and say what to do. Thank you. Verbistu, they don't do that. They never tell you what to do. I'm going to tell you everything, and you'll see what happened. You right away see that it's MS. It wasn't stam. A Rav got up and said, okay, today we're being by the comments. No, it doesn't work like that. Who are you? Who comes to? Why did you say it? What was your source? Did anybody argue with you? And then you can say there's a machlokes, there's a halacha. That's why the system of Gemara is so intricate that everything was recorded. There's no loopholes. There's no like somebody, creeped in and did his own thing. Nobody made their own malava malka here. Everything is documented, recorded. Yeah, even Rabbi Yehuda, you say that. What's your shit? You really hold like this? You don't hold like this? Everything is always gecheshbon to the diuk because then you could trust it. Such a thing you can trust. You see that nobody is manipulating the system. There's nobody who has a little money, who has a little cover, has some buildings, and he's manipulating it. There's no manipulation. What are you manipulating, right? And you see it constantly. But the Gemara finished, it went on to the next level. Yeah, the Rishonim, they did exactly the same thing. They wrote everything, the arguments, and the Nachronim. And that's how they did it. It was a very, very powerful way of maintaining the emes of it. And it's indisputable. You could say, I'm not interested in it. That you could say. But if you're interested in the truth, this is the truth of how Yiddishkeit developed. It's not like... it wasn't a hefgewelt where somebody sat down and decided we're making new mitzvahs today. We're making new halachas today. We're asering this. We're asering that. It doesn't work that way. You don't aser things. Vu, was, ven.
The interesting thing is they have to heshbon the whole thing. What's going to be centuries after?
Yes.
That's the tremendous reward.
Yeah, they saw. It says Eis lasas lashem hefeiru teresecha. Teresh Rabbi was not supposed to be written down because they wanted the living connection between Rebbe and Talmidim. It was very alive. But he realized if it's not going to be written down, then ultimately you'll have charlatans and con artists, and it's done. Your Yiddishkeit is done. Chaim Yankel, smart guy, is going to get up in his place, and he's going to make his Yiddishkeit. He has a Messiah. The word Messiah. What does the word Messiah mean? Messiah means I want to see the Messiah. You have to see the Messiah. If you could show it to me, it's Messiah. Messiah doesn't mean I'm in a bad mood, I'm in an angry mood, I need to get rid of my brother or get rid of somebody else. I have my own traditions. It doesn't work that way. Then it becomes tyranny. It becomes an exercise in power. And people don't trust it. The reason people trusted halacha and rabbanim and bezdin is because the integrity. There was a commitment to emes. I'm not here to make my rules. I'm not trying to control my community. I'm trying to do the right thing.
Is this why you have the source, you're very makbid on source sheets and online and every teaching you don't seriously?
That's why I'm very makbid on sources always. Yeah.
Well, that's the reason.
I just feel it's much more respectful when there's a source for everything. You could see, yeah,
And all your essays,
and then you could say, and this is an idea that I think based on it, fine. But you know what says, what doesn't say, what's quoted, what's not quoted, what's your chiddush, what's not your chiddush.
It's a tremendous responsibility for all the generations ahead.
That they knew the responsibility. Because they knew the responsibility, that's why they didn't cut corners. They didn't cut corners. Take Masechta Pesachim. They could have written the night before Pesach, you do b'dikas chametz and you use a candle. No, how do you know a candle? Why by night? Why do you have to check? What do you have to check? Do bittel? I mean, all these things. V'chuli v'chuli. There's nothing mamash taken for granted. Even this thing that we learned today. They sold flour in Yerushalayim. Reb Meir said it was against the rules. Reb Yehuda says it was pro the rules. Even that. There was nothing they ignored. Is it right to sell flour in Yerushalayim or not? Reb Meir said it's not a good thing. They don't have permission. Reb Yehuda says you're wrong. It's your opinion. It's not true. The Chachamim were very happy about it. Now remember, they can argue about this because they lived after the Beis Hamikdash. They lived 100 years after the Churban Beis Hamikdash, so they weren't there by the Karbonoimer. Right? Yerushalayim was already, nobody was in Yerushalayim anymore. People were there, but it wasn't that same thing. So they were arguing 150, 200 years ago. Rabbi Yehuda said it was fine. Rabbi Meir said it wasn't fine. It wasn't a Negel Halacha L'Maisa for them. But even that, they're arguing about. Even that. It seems like an insignificant thing. People are selling flour. They're selling flour. Rabbi Yehuda says it's fine. Rabbi Meir says no, it's asur. You see, it's just, and everyone has a reason for it. I say this, you say this, there's a reason. It's not stam, I decided it's a good thing, it's a bad thing, I don't like you, so maybe your flour becomes asur. There's no such a thing. There's no agendas, that's another thing. How do you know there's no agendas? People have agendas, yeah? I don't like you, you own most of the groceries, I make the flour asur. So it's a joke, don't do it with God, stam. So that's why it's very, very important that everything was documented with a reason, with a svara, how it developed. You could trust it. Torah is something you can trust because it's all open. You don't believe it? Investigate. There's no such thing. Azoi. Investigate. There's nothing in Yiddishkeit, not even a minhag. I'm not talking about Meshagasan that people have. Meshagasan or Meshagasan. And even they sometimes have a mucker, maybe a little distorted. But there's nothing in Yiddishkeit, Ad Hayoim Hazeh, 3,500 years later, that you can't document and trace back to the exact date, time, place, person. Nothing, mamish nothing. Mamish nothing. Even the smallest things that seem insignificant. Everything. And if a taka can't be, so then you know that it doesn't, there's no source for it. Huh? Yeah, it's not Mechayiv. And it's important because people don't know the difference of a Doiraisa, a Derabanan, a Minig, a Chumra, a Hidur, a Meshagas, OCD, obsessions. They don't know the difference. Yeah? They think if they don't do this, it's already like being Mechal Shabbos and eating pork and eating on Yom Kippur and intermarrying and converting to Catholicism. There's a Mahalach, there's a Doiraisa, there's a Derabanan, there's a Mitzvah Medivri Seifrim, there's a Minig, there's a Takana, there's a Chumra, there's a Hidur, there's a Chumra for one community. Wasn't for other communities. Especially when it comes to Pesach. Especially Pesach is the Yom Tov of Chumras, right? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So in Rav's Bezdin, Rav Paskin, this is how he did it. This is how his Bezdin did it. This is what the people around him did. Yeah, and Shmuel Paskin and that he did. But then they had to take a vote.
After the vote.
No, because there was one Bezdin though. So
Everybody has to do like the vote.
Yeah.
So why did Rav still continue?
No, he didn't. He usually, Rosh Hashanah. And he did it. Daf Chafei. Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yeshua had an argument when Yom Kippur is, right? And Rabbi Gamliel told Rabbi Yeshua, come on Yom Kippur with your money and your stick and your bag. And what did he do? He came. Amar Rabbi Gamliel v'noshkoi al roishai. He kissed him on his head. And he called him Rabbi v'talmidi. You're my Talmud because you did what I said. But you're my Rebbe because you know more than me. Huh? Yeah, and it said Rabbi Yeshua was depressed. Meitzar, he was very upset. And he met Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva told him, Eila moyad Hashem asher tikru oisam b'moyadam. Al tikru oisam ala atem. Atem afilu shoygin, atem afilu mezidin, atem afilu mutayin. The same Rebbeinu Shalom who made the moon said that Yom Tif is based on Bezdin. Rabbi Gamliel is the Sanhedrin. If Sanhedrin says this is Yom Kippur, it's not Yom Kippur, it's not the 10th day of Tishrei, it's irrelevant. Because the whole reason you're doing Yom Kippur is because the Torah said, listen to Bezdin. You say Bezdin is making a mistake, it's still Yom Kippur. As long as the mistake is L'Shem Shamayim. In other words, if it's a mistake because I'm not interested, then they're not Bezdin. They're a bunch of crooks. You understand? But if it's a real Bezdin, they made a mistake. According to you, they made a mistake. Maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong, it's irrelevant. So that's exactly a case. Rabbi Yeshua disagreed, and he still followed Rabbi Gamliel. Because Achirabim Lahatos, if the Bezdin would have voted not like that, they wouldn't have been Mekadosh the Chodesh, then he wouldn't have listened. And Rabbi Akiva is the one who told it to him. Without that, there would be no system. The Torah says Achirabim Lahatos. If you can't follow the majority of the Sanhedrin, then everything would be a machloikas forever. Well, after the Sanhedrin was dissolved, there was no more one big Bezdin. But there was a Sanhedrin, they could convene and decide a bunch of stuff. But yeah, when the Sanhedrin was dissolved, it went to different cities.
Well, like the Supreme Court.
Yeah, like the Supreme Court. It Mechayev the whole country, the whole nation, yeah. The Rambam in his introduction to Mishnah Torah and Mishnayos has the whole arichas, the history on those. Huh? Yeah, the Mishnah Torah and Sefer Pirush